Welcome to Boxing During Dinner, and this is a special episode. This is episode 69.
Oh,
you know,
geez, here we go.
For the sophomores out there that want to laugh at that kind of stuff.
What does that mean?
Sophomore jokes.
Oh,
you got to be a sophomore for those kind of jokes.
What's the significance of the number 69?
Oh, 69.
That it comes right before 70?
No, that the 6, if you turn it around that way, it's a 9. There's nothing wrong with that.
All right, well, yeah.
That's why it's special.
Okay.
Not because of any other innuendos or anything.
No, I understand it now.
Well, Boxing During Dinner, David says I always say we have a lot to talk about.
Because that's exactly how we introduced
This week we don't really have a lot to talk about. It's just a couple of subjects that'll take long. But before we start on those subjects.
Yeah, let's talk about our food first.
Our food, which, you know, not all the time do we have the food right in front of us when we begin the show.
Yeah.
We usually eat afterward and deprive you guys of looking at this food. But
here it is, in living
rigatoni
color.
vodka.
I've got chicken on mine,
He has
but it's
chicken on
essentially
his.
the same thing.
And Jimmy, who's off camera over here, but just take a look at his plate. That's ridiculous.
That is, what was that called again? The Sunday gravy. It's meatballs.
And RANDAZZO'S
it's a classic.
famous meatballs.
Yeah. I mean, those things are literally the size of softballs. If the camera's not translating that for you.
And we can't say it enough. If you're in the Miami area, come to RANDAZZO'S Little Italy here in Coral Gables. It's amazing.
Not only that, but this is literally the best time of year to be out and eating and stuff like that. You can eat out actually out on the front patio of the restaurant. It's like 72 degrees tonight, a cool breeze. It's perfect.
Right. If you're wondering why I have kind of like a long sleeve shirt going on,
it's because his wife dresses him.
It's because I'm born and raised in Miami, and that too. Born and raised in Miami, and it's kind of chilly outside, so I gotta wear this. Meanwhile, David's from Rochester.
I'm a grown-ass man, I'll wear whatever I want.
From Rochester, damn it. I don't have that kind of training with the winters. But David, this is Boxing During Dinner, so we gotta talk about boxing instead of who dresses me or not. Emanuel Steward passed away this week, and it's probably one of the saddest stories in boxing in a long time. It's been a couple of cruel years for boxing, David, with Emanuel Steward's passing. You have Chicanito Hernandez not that long ago. Bert Sugar, the list goes on and on. I was undecided as to when we were going to talk about Emanuel Steward, but as long as we're talking about him now, we both had some interaction with Emanuel Steward in the last couple of years, namely at Cotto's training camp before he fought Ricardo Mayorga. And I had known Emanuel Steward from before with, if you're from Miami, Ed Kaplan, who was on WQAM. We used to go cover the fights in Vegas. And Ed Kaplan, every time they'd ask him, who do you want from HBO? He'd always say Harold and Emanuel. He thought they were the most knowledgeable ones.
Yeah, go figure. And Harold's never even on the show.
And I would say no knock on Jim and Larry and Max, but Ed hates those guys. So he really respected Emanuel. He had Emanuel on all the time. And I remember what I remember the most about Emanuel, that time that we saw him at the Mayorga Cotto training camp, he never forgot who I was. He didn't know my name or anything, but as soon as he saw me, he was like, "Hey, how's it going?" I remember he knew who I was, and that made you feel special. Not every person is like that. And I remember asking him about Hayden Panettiere with Vladimir Klitschko, and I was kind of like thrown aback how casually he spoke about her. I'm like, they actually hung out. And David, how was your interaction with Emanuel? I mean, he was nice to everybody.
I had a really similar interaction, and at this point in my, if you'll call it a boxing career, in covering the sport, I was still kind of a neophyte, if you will, and to me it was a really awesome experience because I'm really nervous to approach Emanuel Steward, and here he is taking my questions into consideration as if I were Thomas Hauser or maybe Jim Lampley himself coming up. And we spoke for several minutes. I mean, I asked him the basics about how Cotto's training camp was going, and then a little bit more about Vladimir Klitschko. We got to the point of learning that Michael Jackson was Vladimir Klitschko's favorite training music.
Nice.
And like I'm echoing your sentiments in a lot of ways. Emanuel Steward treated everybody, by all accounts, as equals. No matter who you were, if you were talking boxing, excuse me, he was going to give you his time. And he would go to any depth of the conversation just because he loved the sport and he felt like that shared kinship with people who wanted to talk to him about it. So in losing him, it's a terrible loss for the sport in general. But HBO Boxing's commentary group is not going to be the same, not even close.
No, it's customary for people to talk great things about a person when they die, even if it's Ted Bundy. They're like, oh man, he was such a great guy. He only killed 20 people. But Emanuel Steward was a great guy, and while he was still alive, people, they expressed that sentiment. And it was nice to see on Twitter the day he passed, how many well-wishers there were, and people remembering Emanuel Steward and saying great things about him. When you mentioned Vladimir Klitschko, I always remember every time he said Vladimir. To me, it sounded like he said Latimer. And I always chuckled every time I'd hear him say that. But great trainer, trained Thomas Hearns, everybody at the Kronk Gym, Gerald McClellan, Milton McCrory, Lennox Lewis, later
Miguel
on.
Cotto, Oscar De La Hoya. It goes on and on.
But he will be missed. It's a big loss for boxing, and as the HBO broadcasts continue and Vladimir Klitschko fights, people are going to miss him more and more. Right now the boxing community is still in shock because it was quick. It was a really quick disease. It took him away quick, but Emanuel Steward will be missed. And in the first broadcast without Emanuel Steward, since his passing, HBO had Thomas Delorme. This was supposed to be his coming out party.
Yeah.
Instead, he gets knocked out by
Luis Carlos Abrego. Yeah, it was. I mean, to me, you had in the early goings. I think that to me it looked like Delorme is a power puncher, and we've known that about him. It looked like in that first round that he didn't want to just quickly finish an opponent. He wanted to get out there and box a little while, put in some rounds to let people know that he had those skills. Pretty good hand speed, a good jab. He used his reach pretty effectively. What happened in the third round was that Luis Carlos Abrego started to land that right hand a little bit more than he should have been comfortable with, and you saw that hurt Delorme before it really put him down. It looked like he was going to be knocked out from the very first time it landed. And after that, it was just one of those fights. He didn't make any adjustments. He stopped throwing the jab, and that right hand landed over and over and over again, which I sometimes call Paul Williams syndrome in the Erislandy Lara fight, where he literally landed that left hand anytime that he wanted to.
Or in the Carlos Quintana fight, the first one.
Right, exactly. So, fighters who can't make those adjustments, to me, well, obviously he paid for it in this fight. As far as what, maybe this is one setback, I don't think so. I think this is kind of a definition of what Delorme is.
It's a major setback, and do you think he was overhyped? Because without fighting a proven fighter, he was hyped up to a degree of a Tito Trinidad.
Right.
But a lot of people forget Tito Trinidad, before he fought Maurice Blocker for the title, fought Alberto Cortez, who was a former title contender.
Tasted the canvas.
And tasted the canvas. And Alberto Cortez was his Abrego.
Right.
And except that Tito got up and
made adjustments and won the fight.
Made adjustments, won the fight. But Thomas Delorme, like you said, David, it's not one setback. It's not like if he lost a tough fight against a veteran. He got his ass handed to him. And we'll see how he reacts after this, but for a fighter to come in with so much hype, to taste defeat so early in his career, it can be a good thing.
He, to me, is a poor man's Amir Khan, and not in a good way. As a guy who has pretty decent hand speed and is very effective at the 1-2 combination, a very basic combination of punches, but who can't get out of his own way when it comes to defense and has a bad chin to boot. So, I mean, even any time that right hand came through, Delorme was hurt. Maybe not to the point of falling down, but that every single time that came through, it stunned him, and he couldn't stop it. Not to mention that he doesn't have much of a body attack. Right. I don't want to sit here and beat a guy while he's down, but I think this was a real revelation about where he was talent-wise going into this fight. Right.
And an interesting argument that came about on Twitter following his loss was the state of Puerto Rican boxing. Because, after Tito Trinidad, the torch was kind of passed down to Miguel Cotto. Miguel Cotto, he's still around, he's still a world champion, but it's later in his career. Cotto's probably going to fight for a couple more years.
Yeah, but who's next?
Delorme was supposed to be the heir apparent. I'm looking now towards the younger guys, like Felix Verdejo, who's going to debut for Top Rank in a couple months. But the guy I really liked coming out of the Olympics was Jonathan Gonzalez, the junior middleweight.
And he's fat as hell and doesn't take care of himself.
Except he doesn't take care of himself. And even in that fight, he got a draw, right?
Yeah, most recently against Sergey Zinzurek.
He got a draw, even though he came in 9 pounds overweight, even though he looked like he had eaten all these plates of food, continuously for 24 hours a day, and he still got a draw. So I like Jonathan Gonzalez, but he needs to get his ass in shape.
And I don't think that he will. That's always kind of been the knock on these Puerto Rican fighters. A lot of these guys are are drunks who eat a lot, and it's you don't want to make a blanket statement.
I didn't say that.
Regrettably, I'm a big Miguel Cotto fan. You won't meet a bigger Puerto Rican fan than me, but that's just kind of been the knock on a lot of these guys. They let go of themselves between fights. I mean, you look at Juan Manuel Lopez, who fights at featherweight and weighs 180 pounds between fights. I mean, these guys, for whatever reason, don't take themselves as seriously, and it is, unfortunately, a real recognition of where they're at this point. And this week is apparently when Ivan Calderon is going to retire from the sport. He was a brilliant Puerto Rican boxer.
He retired today, actually, and it's about time. And now that you mentioned Juanma Lopez, talking about Puerto Rican boxing, a couple of weeks ago, he spoke to Telemundo about a possible fight with Wilfredo Vasquez in February. His speech is slurred. I mean, the guy needs to retire ASAP. No, not Vasquez, Lopez. Salido probably damaged him for good. I expect Wilfredo Vasquez to beat him, and for his own good, Juan Manuel Lopez's people should look after him.
This is crazy to me. I don't mean to take this conversation in a completely different direction, but
you can take it whatever direction you want.
Let's go there.
It's our fucking show.
Hey, he just said the F word, in case you didn't hear what that was.
It's because it's on the internet.
Right, it's on the interwebs. Boxing has a history of brain injuries, and people say, "Oh, MMA is a much more brutal sport." Maybe for sudden impacts when you see those those knockouts and things like that, where the guy's being split open. But that sustained beating doesn't happen in that sport because the fight is stopped. In boxing, you see guys taking maybe not those biggest shots, but a lot of pretty decent shots. I mean, his fight against Salido was outrageous. A human being to sustain the type of beating he has over 18 rounds and 2 fights between that guy.
A human skull isn't supposed to take 100, 200 punches a fight. And that's what happened to Lopez the last couple of fights.
If you are not willing to change your style, then your corner needs to step in and change it. And Lopez is not even really 30 years old. It's not just bad for that fight when you don't make adjustments and you lose that fight. It's bad because you're not supposed to get hit. The boxing job is to hit and not get hit. That's why Floyd Mayweather is one of the few types of fighters who I think will have long-term sustainability, if you will, if he doesn't blow all of his money like an idiot. But the rest of these guys, there are so few success stories because everybody basically wants to watch a fight of the year, but nobody wants to be in one. And the regret of the matter is that these guys who do end up in these types of fights don't have longevity.
Right, and even the guys that they retire unscathed, like an Oscar De La Hoya, starts talking about a comeback. What would he want to come back now? He's the lead, the lead promoter with Richard Schaefer of Golden Boy Promotions. The guy, he still speaks well. He's undamaged, no scars on his face. Why would he want to come back and do it all over again?
I literally cannot understand that at all. De La Hoya's proven anything that he needs to prove, and now there's this, this rumor that is gaining more and more steam that he's coming back 4 years to the date after a thrashing by Manny Pacquiao because he thought he came in at too light of a weight. Sure, that has something to do with it.
He's the one that fuels the fire to those rumors.
Right. I mean, he's tweeting things like, I could beat any one of the 154 pounders in the sport with the exception of Canelo Alvarez. No.
Because that's his fighter.
yeah, exactly. And he has to say that. But as the promoter, De La Hoya has no business being in a ring. The guy is the head of the second largest boxing promotional agency in the world. What is there, to come back for? The guy's a millionaire already. I don't want it. I don't want to see it.
But David, some guys that we do want to see fight are going to fight in the next few weeks. Erislandy Lara, we're going to talk about him more next week against Vanes Martirosyan, who finally fights somebody who has a pulse. Yeah. After, calling everybody and the mothers on Twitter, he's actually stepping up to the plate. What do you think of that fight briefly before we dissect it next week?
I'm not a big Martirosyan fan. The guy can fight, but Lara is a better crafted fighter. This is a step up for Lara too, but I think that on this scale, Lara is the guy to lose the fight, and I don't think that he will.
So next week we'll be discussing that fight amongst others, and we'll have a kind of like should we have a presidential election type of
sure, we'll talk about it. Yeah.
Maybe
we'll wave our flags like Don King.
We'll wave our flags like Don King, but next week we will have guests on the show.
A couple, hopefully.
Couple, 3, 4.
We'll see what happens. It's
Evander Holyfield maybe here. No.
Not well. We've had him before, but maybe we'll fly him down.
Yeah,
we don't even have a budget for that.
I want to eat.
Yeah, let's eat. We'll see you next week.